Well, today is New Hampshire Day. That's kind of like Groundhog Day, only it only comes every 4 years, right? So do we have 6 more weeks of politics? Yeah. 6 more months? Yeah. A year? Yeah, pretty much. So we have numerous candidates today running for president. Lots of them, and only half as many as we had a few months ago. But let's take a look at some of the ones that we have. So we have, obviously, Sleepy Joe, right? Sleepy Joe Biden. Biden is probably about ready to say, Biden. I'm done. It looks as though on Real Clear Politics that Biden has slipped from leading for the last year or so all the way down to perhaps finishing fourth or fifth. He and Elizabeth Warren and Amy Klobuchar may be fighting it out for third, fourth, and fifth. But by all indications, Biden's done. That's the way I see it. I can't imagine him surviving. And of course, the Democrats are scrambling to come up with the so-called mainstream guy to replace him, as though Joe Biden was mainstream, right? So you can take a look at Joe and you can call him any one of a number of things. How about Creepy Joe, Sleepy Joe, Drunk Joe? I got pictures for all of them, and I'll share them in the broadcast as we go along. Creepy Joe, as I say, is probably done. So the person likely to finish first, actually, is Bernie Sanders, the socialist Democrat. Really probably only call him a Democrat once every 4 years. Heavy on the socialist. I think he went on his honeymoon to the Soviet Union with his wife. That doesn't by itself fix it, but it certainly doesn't help, does it? Bernie would fix most everything by giving freebies out and handing money out and providing free things everywhere. Given the fact that our Federal Reserve now is spending money as it sees fit, that the Pentagon has spent perhaps $30 trillion that are unaccounted for, we should recognize that money is being spent that nobody has. Money is being spent that no one accounts for. And what's the upshot of that? The shallow view of it is, well, gee, if they spend money, even if it's not on budget and it actually gets spent and it buys stuff, then we don't lose anything, right? Wrong. What happens is, of course, is that the money that goes out from the Pentagon goes out for billions and billions of dollars into the economy, trillions of dollars into the economy, and those trillions of dollars get spent. Whether they get spent on McDonnell Douglas or Boeing or anything else, they go into the pockets. That money goes out of the Pentagon in exchange for weapons and bombs and helicopters and all kinds of things, and goes out into the economy and then gets spent. And when it gets spent, what happens, folks, is we get taxed. Now, most people say, well, I thought we didn't get taxed because we're not paying income tax on it. We're not paying estate tax on it. The IRS is not collecting it from us. We have a deficit of $1 trillion a year. So obviously we're not paying it, right? Well, there are 2 problems with that. Problem number 1, and this is the classic old world response, is that our children and our grandchildren are going to pay this. And of course, the Federal Reserve is going to charge us interest on money that they made up out of nothing in exchange for us paying interest to them forever, to the tune of 2 or 5 or 10 times what they used without spending a dime of real money or putting up any gold or real assets at all. But that's the easy one. As hard as it seems, that's the easy one. The hard one is, and what most people don't recognize, is that there is another form of insidious tax, and that form of insidious tax is this. If the McDonnell Douglas folks or the Blackwater folks spend trillions of dollars, billions of dollars into the economy that was never accounted for and that was never collected as taxes, what it does is increase the volume of dollars in the economy, in the world. And every time that happens, every dollar is worth less. So what in effect they have done then is they've taken your dollar and snipped 5 or 10 cents off of it every year, and that dollar becomes worth less. And of course, added to the insidiousness of it now is that the Fed has a reserve, trillions of dollars in excess reserve that it has made available to the bankers so that they can borrow money from the reserve without paying on deposits and savings and CDs. So you and I don't have any chance, unless we invest in hard assets or stock or whatever else, to even have our money hold its value. Everything goes down. And so the middle class, the people with the least investments, are losing all of the time. And the poor are simply just making less and less money that will buy fewer and fewer goods. So it is an insidious regressive tax, and it is unending, and it is perhaps the worst of all, and nothing's being done about it. And of course, most of our Congress people aren't even smart enough to figure it out. So Bernie would like to spend money we don't have. And I would say that, well, that's obvious, we shouldn't vote for him. But the truth of the matter is that nobody else is any better or much better. It's all a matter of degree. So the guy that's likely to finish second is a guy named Pete Buttigieg. I guess Buttigieg is how you're supposed to say it, even though it looks like Buttigieg. And so it's Peter Paul Montgomery Buttigieg. That's Peter Paul Almond Joy, I guess. Sometimes you feel like a nut, sometimes you don't. This little guy is 38 years old. He's only been in the workforce now about 13 or 14 years total. He spent half of that time or more messing around with various political outfits. And then he was the mayor of a little, Indiana city for a while, and is either resigned or didn't run again so he could run for president. So where does little Petey come up with his experience to be the president? Well, you'll have to tell me. I mean, he's obviously a very smart guy, but forget all the rest of the stuff. He has significantly less experience than the community organizer Obama, who at least had 2 years in the Senate, for whatever that's worth. He even has less experience than the baseball manager, little George Shrubby Bush, who was the ceremonial governor of Texas for 8 years, and before that was some kind of a deputy junior promotional guy for a baseball team. It gets crazier and crazier the more we go, but there are billionaires, many of them that have spent money on Buttigieg, and let me just give you a list of some of them that are. What is commonly being reported now is a guy named Seth Klarman, who's worth $1.5 billion from hedge funds, and he also gave money to Cory Booker, to Kamala Harris, and to Amy Klobuchar. So he's running a bunch of others, but there are a number of others. The Instagram wife of Kevin Systrom, Nicole, gave money to Booker, Inslee, and to Buttigieg. Let me give you a couple other ones that are good ones. Reid Hoffman, who's worth $1.9 billion with LinkedIn, gave money to Bennett, Booker, Bullock, Kirsten Gillibrand, Jay Inslee, Kamala Harris, and Amy Klobuchar on top of Buttigieg. These are all billionaires, every one of them. There are 40 billionaires that have given money to Buttigieg. There are several family members of Pritzkers that are hotel investment folks. There's Goldman Fowler, who is worth a couple of billion, $3 billion that gave to Amy as well as to Buttigieg. These guys are betting on 2 or 3 horses at the same time. You've got John Stryker, who's in medical equipment. I wonder if he's coming up with the virus for us, vaccine for us. You've got the Lauder family that is of Estee Lauder. They've given money. You've got David Geffen, who is a movie producer. And you've got Wendy Schmidt, who is the wife of Eric Schmidt, who is going to help me get this video on for YouTube because, of course, it's the Google fortune, right? Yeah, and whatever they call Google now. You've got Blavatnik, Len Blavatnik, who's been involved in politics all along. So in total, there are 40 billionaires that have given money to Buttigieg. And you say, well, gee, Trump's the billionaire on one side. Well, how many billionaires does it take to match that? It takes 40, apparently. All right, so likely to come out third, and this is kind of wild. This is how I'm predicting it anyway, and it could be very, very close, is Amy Klobuchar, who I call Glob of Tar, and she has absolutely nothing to speak for herself. I mean, there are no distinguishing characteristics about her except that her right eyebrow goes higher than her left one, and she was on the Judiciary Committee when they reviewed Kavanaugh. And she didn't make a splash, but she sounded kind of sort of like Hirono and like Kamala Harris, and she has just turned out to be the woman out of that bunch, a person out of that bunch, since Booker's out too, that has survived through the process and has a place. And it looks like she's rising because Sleepy Joe is falling, and so is our next contestant, who is Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren, who was on the top 6 months or 9 months or a year ago. But let me back up. Let me back up to Amy, because Amy also has billionaires backing her. And if you think Amy is as simple as she looks, well, she probably is. But Amy in 2016 spent some time with one of my favorite guys, John McCain, and his little sidekick, Mini-Me Graham, right? And they were in the Ukraine, and they were the guests of host President Peter Poroshenko, who was the then president of the Ukraine, and they addressed the military at that time. And of course, Peter Poroshenko has been replaced by Volodymyr Zelensky, who is nothing but an actor, who is the new president now of Ukraine. And he is backed by the Russian billionaire oligarchs and Kolomoisky and others who owned Privet Bank and Denpro, the soccer team, right? So it goes round and round. Everybody's got a billionaire, and they're billionaire oligarch Zionist bankers, and you have to watch because that's what most of them are. So if you think any of these guys are crawling out from under a rock and not backed by billionaires, guess again, it ain't happening. So Amy, as I say, has nothing really to show for it except that she is the more middle mainstream one that might replace Biden. And then you've got creepy Tom Steyer, the creepy banker. And this is the guy who 4, 5, 6 years ago decided that he was going to be the temperature moderation guy. He was going to be the global warming guy. He was going to be the climate change guy. And he was going to, by God, champion getting coal and oil and all the petroleum products, the petro fuels, out from under the environment. Except if you dig back a few years, you'll see that he had to sell off his coal and petroleum stocks in order to clean himself up enough to run. And he is spending millions of dollars trying to prove that he would be a good president, and he's a billionaire creepy banker. So then you have Elizabeth poking fake Qantas, and Elizabeth, of course, is falling off the top and probably won't go anywhere. I think after this week, both Biden and Elizabeth Warren are done. They may straggle on for a few weeks. Sleepy Joe may try to make it to South Carolina just to see if he's got a firewall there. I think his firewall is going to be leaky by the time he gets there. If he loses in Iowa and comes out third or fourth, loses in New Hampshire and maybe comes in fifth, loses in Nevada, and he's probably going to lose there, and limps into South Carolina. I don't think there's much left of him. And then we've got the soda jerk, Mikey, little Mikey Bloomberg, who is going to help you determine how many calories your soda needs. He's also going to make sure that all the restaurants list the calorie contents of every item, I guess right down to the ranch dressing, right? And apparently New York, when he was the mayor of New York, had to do that. So Mikey's been buying up properties and has, I don't know, 2 5 or 6 story buildings right off of Central Park that are now his, and he's paying 10 or 20 or $50 million per floor to buy them. I've looked at the stuff, and of course we're not seeing the inside of it. It's rather unobtrusive on the outside. And at the same time, he is championing the little homes for the little folks, right? The bed sits, the 300 square foot bed sits that the little people are going to have, that are going to be part of the servant class of New York City and every other city, folks. Pay attention. Those of us who survived this debacle will be in 300 square foot bed sits, single person or 2-person bed sits. He's also, and you have to be really aware of this, he is the anti-Second Amendment champion, and he has given money. This Virginia thing of taking out the Second Amendment is largely the work of little Bloomberg trying to get rid of guns so that they can take the whole world down and not have us shooting back at them. Mikey is maybe the most dangerous of all, the scariest of all, and you need to pay attention to it. So, let me back up. The Buttigieg, which nobody can spell that way and come up with, was supposedly, when I looked at it at Wikipedia a couple of weeks ago before he won Iowa, they made some comment that his family comes from Malta, right, from the country Malta, and that Buttigieg originally meant chicken farmer or poultier. Do you know what? That's gone out of Wikipedia now that he won in Iowa. We got to clean it up. We got to get rid of the chicken farmer part, right? So how much different is the other side of things than where we are now? And I'm going to throw some pictures at you because I play with these and I can't help myself. On the other side of this, where the casinos and gambling and media and entertainment, the folks that are also helping Biden and Buttigieg and Klobuchar and others, there's another batch of them just identical, also billionaires, also largely Zionists, and they are helping out Donald Trump. And Adelson is right at the core of it, of course. So I'll put some stuff of Adelson in there and show that Adelson is right at the core of it. And Adelson is linked, as is Soros, to the Rothschild banking empire. And I see them, and I see Schmidt and the rest of these guys, these billionaires, these entrepreneurial billionaires. Most of them are not legitimate billionaires. They are stand-ins. And I think probably crazy Zuckerberg is the primal example of that. Somebody that has no business running a company, who doesn't even look human, and yet he's worth billions of dollars because he came up with the program that the Pentagon had been working on until the day he filed the corporate records. And I think go clear back to our good buddy Bill Gates, I think they're all like that. I think they're all like that. I think they've all been primed and placed and backed and manipulated and totally taken under control by the deep money folks. Every one of them. I don't think you take Musk, you take Bezos, Schmitz, the rest of these guys, take a look deep down under, and they're not any different than Jeffrey Epstein. It's just that the people they're screwing are all of us. All of us, not just the 13-year-olds. Horrible as that is. So we've got Trump on the other side, and he's backed by the Adelsons, and there is this collusion with Epstein and the Adelsons and Roy Cohn and Roger Stone that's up to be sentenced here shortly. Roy Cohn, who is a mafia insider, Zionist mafioso in New York City, was an insider all the way back to McCarthy and Nixon and the rest of these guys, and was a 10 or 20 call a day buddy of Donald Trump's until he died. And then, of course, Donald downplayed it. It wasn't that big a deal. Just like he downplayed Jeffrey Epstein, just like he downplayed WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, and did nothing to get Julian Assange out. So what I would say to you then is pick your poison, right? Because it's all poisonous. All of it is. If you don't want to wait for the coronavirus, you can step right into the fray and pick your poison now. So our world is crazy. Our world is upside down. And these guys, I watched as much as I could stand this morning of Sean at SGT talking to Robert Dumbass Steele, Vivas, who is spewing alternately obvious truths and mixed information and curious possibilities and total disinformation, right? And he's not the only one. You've got Full of Shit Benjamin. You've got a whole bunch of others. You've got Little Pea Shooter 20X22. You've got Kellogg's Cereal Brain. You've got dozens of others that and little Brave Panda, Dr. Brave Panda. All of these guys that are willing and Lionel and Mark Dice as well. I mean, once they get invited to the president, they'll say anything. And I'd love to say that this alt bunch is bringing you truth, but the truth of the matter is that Patreon and their private channels and their items to sell, their sweatshirts, the t-shirts, the rest of that, and perhaps supporters and various kinds of underpinning for them financially is speaking louder to them. Some of it may just be ego. I've got 200,000 subscribers. I've got 12,000 subscribers. I've got 12 million subscribers. If you'll notice, my subscribers have gone down by, I think, about 7,000 since I decided to tell people, hey, look, you just cannot count on any of this to work. None of it's going to work. The only thing that's going to work is us. That's it. We are the legitimate ones. We are the citizens. We are the ones that have the right to speak up. And you're not going to gain any traction at all, as I have just tried to point out, by picking one of these politicians. They're all backed, just like a little Marco Polo, a little Marco Rubio. He was kissing at the red-shoed feet of Adelson, just like Trump is. There's no difference. They're all the same. So pick your poison. That's the bottom line. The blog that I'm working on is about half funded. I have really not talked to you folks since I suggested that's a possibility. Set up a separate website, have emails that go out, share videos, and have you folks be able to post on 5 or 10 topics. I started out with some construction stuff, some new, modern and ancient history, our local politics, and some other things that would work as separate functions. Right now, I'm going to send everything to everybody. I may indicate which of those categories it's in until we get the blog stuff up. And then I'm going to try to move to a blog site, which for the most part will be impervious to this YouTube crap. One of the things that you'll note if you followed, so High Impact Vlogs, VLOGS, he also has other stuff. I watch him regularly. He is more of an anarchist than I am, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole about jackboot militant police officers. I hate that ever exists. But he is straight on with the Second Amendment. He is straight on with not picking one of the fake red-blue sides versus the other. They are red and blue, and throw them both away. Pick a different color, because they're bad, okay? And any of these folks that tell you that Trump has a fix, or that somebody else has a fix, or a politician has a fix, or that this election is somehow going to be better, I will say to you, there is zero chance of that. And, I had a guy that wrote to me today and said, basically, Trump did not, let me just quote him, Trump did not rescind the Patriot Act, right? They have renewed it. They've renewed NAFTA and made it worse, and put Agenda 21 in this new trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. It's worse than the old one, if that's possible, and it will not help the middle class that lost 10 million jobs, 6 to 10 million jobs, and 7 times that many out through the periphery of it. He does not do anything about the 9/11 disclosure. As a matter of fact, he promised us that he would tell us the truth, and that Jeb Bush, who claimed that his brother saved us in 9/11, was a fraud, and that he was going to tell us the real truth. Well, he hasn't done that. How about the JFK disclosure? How about bringing the troops home from anywhere? Pick one, pick one. Hawaii, bring the troops home from somewhere. He has re-escalated the wars. He has not done anything to de-escalate Syria. And you folks that haven't looked at this, Bush bombed people 24 times a day. Obama bombed people 34 times a day all over the world. And Trump has bombed people so far in his term 121 times a day. So he is bombing more per day than little shrubby Bush and Hussein, no citizen Obama did. And so if you're telling me that he's kept his promises, he's done 100 or so miles of border. Most of the stuff that he did the border on already had borders on it. He just made them look fancy, like in San Diego and a few other places. The places where there was no border still has no border. The place where there were barbed wire fences still have barbed wire fences. Some of the places where there were walk across pedestrian fences now have a taller fence at 10 miles at a piece, but there are hundreds of miles where anybody can drive across. A 7th grader in a car could drive across, and kids 5 could walk across. It's crazy stuff. The industrial spending, the military spending has gone up. The vaccine stuff has not been addressed at all. Nobody is holding them accountable. The Federal Drug Administration is not properly testing any of the stuff, and they're pushing it out. They're hiding all kinds of volatile stuff in it. The chemtrail spraying is just as much as it has ever been, and maybe more so. And the idiot cereal brain, what is it, Kellogg's brain, said, well, it's good. It's the good chem stuff now. Before it was the bad chem deals, and now it's the good stuff. How about Mr. Cereal Brine? How about we have fresh? How about we have fresh air? Would that be okay? Fresh water, fresh air. We get rid of the fluoridation all over the country. You know, let me just throw you an aside. Go to Safeway, Walmart, wherever you go, Fry's, wherever you go for groceries or for pharmaceuticals, Walgreens or one of these, and look in their toothpaste aisle and see how hard it is to find non-fluoridated toothpaste. Knowing what we know today, it's still crazy. You know, the voting machines, the 2018 election that Q said was going to be all fixed. Yeah, tell me, boom, boom on that one. Mother of all bombs on that one. You know who got bombed on November of 2018? The American people did. Whether your candidate won or lost, you got bombed out because you have no idea whether your votes were counted. You have no idea how they were going to be counted. You have no idea that anybody can keep track of it. You have no idea how many people that are dead voted, how many people that are illegal voted, how many people who are felons and not non-citizens and others that have voted. You have no idea whether it has any bearing in fact at all, and nothing has been done since then to fix the elections, to get rid of the digital stuff, to legitimize the paper ballots, to provide for identification at the polling booth. You know, when I go buy a 6-pack of beer, I have to produce an ID. Well, I'm so old I don't have to do it anymore. I mean, they look at me and realize, oh my God, this guy's 3 times too old to buy beer. He's so old he shouldn't buy beer. And yet, you know, we have to, anybody that's under 35 has to legitimately show that they're over 18 years, or over 21, or whatever the legal age is for alcohol and for cigarettes, but not for voting. That's not important enough. No, that would be unkind to the people that don't have identification. It's just crazy stuff. So nothing has been done to fix the ballot machines. Nothing has been done to legitimize the voting. There are states all over the country, and I have pointed them out. Montana, Arizona. You didn't think so, did you? Yeah, Texas. How about Georgia and Florida and elsewhere that have falsified it? Bernie, if Bernie's legitimate, you know, I'll start smoking. He's not, because there were at least 15 states that Hillary put her thumb on the ballots, put her thumb on the totals, and manipulated the results, and Bernie knew it, and Bernie knew that he was being cheated of it, and he still came back in and supported Hillary for the general election. Still did it. Still, he didn't hold out. So who will sell out? Well, everybody sells out, except maybe a few of us, right? So there are so many more issues that we can talk about, but none of these things matter until those of us that are waking up and that are awake can say to the rest of them, hey, look at the incongruities. And I don't care which side you're on. I mean, obviously the Democrats, if you looked at Tucker Carlson's thing the other day about the bill that's being promoted by 50 Democrats that prioritizes illegals and exonerates them from felonies and keeps them from being deported, even with multiple felonies, even with them crossing the border illegally multiple times, they are still not going to be, if this bill were to pass, not going to be deported. They're going to be protected, and they're going to be given benefits greater than our veterans, greater than our Medicaid folks, greater than our SSI folks, greater than our retirees. It's just crazy stuff. So neither side is helping us, and it's not going to change. And I hope that doesn't sound dark and negative, right? There are other ways to look at this. And certainly one of them, the one up front, is that, folks, hey, we got to do something. We have to do something ourselves. We must not allow this to go on like it is. We need to wake people up. We need to put it up front. I'm probably going to do some crazy stuff this next few weeks because I had it all loaded and then I put it aside. All right, so if you're at all interested in being on a mailing list, drphrog at seethingfrog.com. is my address. It's drphrog at seethingfrog, all one word, .com. You can send me stuff and say, put in the heading, put me on the mailing list, or mailing list, or whatever else. And you can sort it for a while till we get it all straightened out, and we'll do some blog stuff. Thank you so much for watching. I felt remiss in not getting right back to you. This is too long, but there's so much good stuff to talk about, and I'm going to play with putting some of my pictures on it, so I hope you're entertained, if nothing else entertained. And please, feel free to laugh. Thanks so much for watching.